Hey everyone, in my mind, there's nothing worse than being falsely imprisoned and forced to admit your crime you didn't do. With most cases, there might be like a severe lack of evidence to like really back up a person, so the most they can give is just their word. But you know, unfortunately, that really isn't enough. That's why you get people doing like 10 years, 20 years, up to 30 years maybe, for like never even committing a crime, just because they were at the worst place ever, at the worst time as well. However, there are some times where like the person's released and turned out to be innocent, and it's revealed that the police could have like altercated with evidence, or made them like give a false confession when they interrogated them to make like the whole thing much easier. But some people only find out after like the person, like I said, is like 20 years deep in the sentence. But in this story, these buffoons of police officers or interrogators tried to force the most extreme confession in the most dumbest situation ever. How does a false murder case sound when you have no evidence of the guy being dead and said rotting corpse calls up the next day revealing that he's fine? It sounds dumb, but that is the case in this video with this poor guy who was forced in a situation. And I will admit that from the setup that I gave, it does sound funny, but from this guy's point of view, it was actual hell. This story starts all the way back in 2018 with an older guy called Thomas Perez Sr., who went out to walk his dog one evening, and I know already, most innocent sounding opening ever, but the dog somehow returns home without the other guy. So after the next day, and still like hours of him not getting home, his son, Thomas Perez Jr., just like the same name, calls the police worried about him. And you probably preface now that the guy called Junior, he's not that young, he's like 40-year-old guy, so I just want to give that information. And already it sounds like the most typical case of like an older guy going missing. I'm not calling him senile, but you know, that is like most of the stories sometimes, when, you know, where a guy walks out to do something or for an event and he doesn't tell his family and he goes missing for a bit, now reported dead, just goes missing. And in the most bizarre, sharp turn ever, the police take in the son, Junior, and they interrogate them simply by the suspicion that they believed he killed his dad, just because, you know, on the call, when they called him like worried about him, he sounded a bit too relaxed. That's it. And I have to mention now, this is where the story actually gets like really miserable and depressing, where it goes from like, you know when you watch one of those JCS videos, like it's like a dumb teenager that kills his parents because, you know, some dumb game. And within the same hour of him being in the interrogation room, he admits to it because he's so bored, he wants to be released and go home, just play Fortnite. Take that, flip it, multiply it by 100, and that's where you have the story. Because they actually ended up holding him for 17 hours, and it wasn't like one of those cases where they actually like keep him there, go check some of the place, get evidence, and come back to him. They were the entire time completely torturing him. These two guys that you see now in the video were the main people that were so diehard to believe that he was like the actual person that killed his dad. Aside from the first thing I mentioned of him sounding like true relaxed when they called him, the two other absolutely dead to rights evidence they had against him was, number one, when they went to his house to like pick him up, they brought over a police dog to sniff the place because, and they found like there was a couple of blood stains around the place that was from his dad. But keep that in your mind later for the videos, it'll be really funny. And third, they found the dad's wallet and phone at his place where he was staying before he took out the dog walking. And I guess, yeah, that could be a sign of like something bad happening, but I'm just like giving signs, I'm giving the evidence that they believed in was like a sign of this guy killing his dad. Because it was those simple three facts they were concerned by that led them to like lie to him, to make him mentally crack and give a confession. Which is when they started saying like the dumbest shit of like, they found his dad's body and he was, in their own words, you know, proudly, he had a toe tag around him right now as he was at the morgue.
We just told you we found your dead dad, and you don't give a.
That should really give a small sign of like how unprofessional these guys are, because what kind of like other mentally sane person would actually blitzkrieg a person to like mentally breaking down from hearing that? With a normal officer, I definitely imagine like they might have like the most evidence, but they still want to like reel him in to like a small confession, just like very slowly, not just like straight away blatantly lie to his face while having no evidence at the same time. And as I mentioned now that this poor guy Perez, he's struggling as well from like shit like depression and stress, as well as physical issues that are made worse by that environment, like a very tiny room, shit like high blood pressure and asthma. So within the first 3 hours of interrogation, the guy's asking them, Perez, to go to his house or pick up his medication for him for like these issues. But they refuse because they believe that his hysteric state wasn't a sign of like severe stress, it was a sign of madness and guilt, definitely not withdrawal, and he's actually getting worse from having no medication. I mean, come on, at the same time as well, even a normal person doesn't have like the same problems as him, that don't take medication. Any normal person staying in that place for 17 hours would break down just like him, trust me. And so as this is going on, he gets so nervous, he gets to the point like where he's like hitting himself, ripping his shirt off, pulling at his hair. All while like these two guys like sitting on their fat ass being all smug like, oh my god, we have them so good. And also being pretty condescending, asking him stuff like, where's daddy? Like the worst ever possible sign of like being a bad cop, torturing him for hours. and then being a good cop, you know, maybe if you tell us, we might come back and bring you one paracetamol, that's it. I'm not saying that makes it so bad that within the final hours of the interrogation, they bring in his dog that he had at his place, and they torment him more by saying that if he doesn't confess, they're gonna take his dog to a pound and euthanize him. All while it's like treating him like a child, saying dumb shit like, look at her, she's looking at you because she knows that you killed your dad, you did it.
You sit there and say you don't know what happened, and your dog is sitting here looking at you, knowing that you killed your dad.
If in this video I look like I'm smiling, I'm not laughing with these two assholes. When you see a story like this insane, that's also real at the same time, I tend to smile a little bit just from pure shock because it sounds that unreal. But these two officers or interrogators, they're crazy. They're the real like emotion vacuums, showing no feelings. At one point, one of them being like a grandpa pointing at the dog, being like, Morgan here is gonna be taken to the pound and euthanized. And his partner slightly corrects him, being like, it's actually called Margot. And the guy laughs like, oh sorry, Margot, don't dog, who cares?
Daddy's dead because of you.
No.
Yes, not only that, but poor Morgan here.
Margot.
Sorry, Margot had to witness it.
But finally after that, the poor guy Perez finally confesses falsely to killing his dad by stabbing him with scissors after having a fight where his dad like swung a beer bottle at his head, which is the most bare bones like simple confession ever, but that was probably enough for these two guys to be satisfied, walk out and high five down the corridor being really proud. But then they still keep the poor guy in the interrogation room, and he has like in such stress and delusional guilt, he breaks down next to his dog hugging him, and with no one watching him, he tries to hang himself like with the strings in his shorts. And again, I'm just saying, I'm smiling a little bit from pure shock, that's it. However, now you have another sharp turn in the story because now Perez Jr., he was admitted to a mental hospital, and on the third day, Perez Sr. called up the station and asked where his son was. And as it turns out, who would have known from that huge stack of evidence, it turns out he was fine and not dead, rotting out in the ditch. He's actually walking out to catch a train to visit a friend in LA all the way over there, how far it was, and then going to the airport the next day to pick up his daughter that was arriving there. I have no idea how the dog managed to get home by itself, but again, that's the least issue, where you have the main guy that was killed, you know, turn out to be alive and well. And if you remember that blood stain I mentioned earlier in the video, you know, take that out of your head, because it turns out that tiny blood stain, all it was like a finger prick from a diabetes test he took in the bathroom. Yeah, there you go, raw card evidence destroyed. But thankfully, after 3 days, Perez Jr. was released from the mental hospital, and naturally, he sued the police station. Which is why, yeah, it happened all the way back in 2018, but I'm talking about it now recently, because it was finally settled for $900,000. Yeah, that's all you get. Just that, just nothing. Dust. For being psychologically and physically tortured from the withdrawal. And the trauma as well, don't forget that. Bring that with you. I don't know how he got that little. He could have definitely gone for like tens of millions with that story. Because the way it's set up, or you present your court, it doesn't like an actual joke, like so fictitious, it couldn't possibly happen. But it did. Now I should mention that the punchline or the cherry on top is that those two bastards that interrogate him still work there. And I will say now, from the footage I showed, you would believe that there was two people, but I think from what I've read, I saw a third person as well. Where he was going like probably investigating the guy's house, but either way, he still like had a part in his mad joke. And it does mention that one of the three guys did retire. It could have been like Twiddle Dee or Twiddle Dum from the videos. But either way, two of those guys still work in the police station, which is insane to me. So now after this long ass like actually depressing story, I don't even have like a good positive point to make or a message to get across. All I can really say is that now, after seeing like this whole video of like him in the interrogation room, I can see how people give like false confessions when being berated by goblins for hours on end.
After I watched this video and saw the techniques that they used on Tom, it became apparent to me that they can get you or I to confess to killing Abraham Lincoln if they wanted to.
Couple that pressure with the idea of like maybe going to prison if you won't find out being innocent, that's terrifying, good God.